If you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. For more videos like this. What is the scariest thing you have ever seen? Found 2 different dead bodies in the same school year. One was a murder victim dumped in the woods by our school's soccer field. Someone kicked the ball into the woods during gym, and when we went to find it, we smelled the smell. Then that summer, on a canoe trip with summer camp, we came upon one of 3 missing boaters that had drowned the week before when the river was really high and moving very fast. He was so bloated and oddly colored we didn't know what we were looking at first. It was pretty horrific. I was downstairs as a kid, playing a long session of Final Fantasy Tactics. It was always eerie to me, being up that late and everyone else being asleep. It was winter, so there was that sound of snow scratching against the window. I can remember that I kept looking over, as a paranoid kid would, and going back to my game. At one point, I must have fallen asleep and kept dreaming I was in the room. I can remember hearing the scratching and looking over to see a pale face and eyes staring in at me, scratching to get in the window. I scrambled and fell out of the chair, waking up, and when I looked up to the window there was nothing. I was camping with a group of 8, and we portaged to the campsite this year. It was raining a bit here and there, and a little windy, but we decided to go with it and hopped in our canoes. Halfway through we all go silent as we notice a dark wall of rain in the distance slowly heading our way. No reception, middle of nowhere on a lake surrounded by woods, and it was soon getting dark, so we decided to fight through it to reach site. As insane as it was within the storm itself, I wasn't really that scared as adrenaline was rushing through me. The moments before were terrifying though. The eeriest half hour as we watched this storm approach. At first it was really quiet, as if animals knew and went into hiding. Then the wind picked up, paddling got harder, we got colder and felt more and more naked next to nature. And whenever I thought the wind would stop picking up, it'd slowly keep getting louder anyway. And we had no control over its path. No way to duck out and hide under a roof. When the storm covered half the sky, that white glow before it starts raining, I started to paralyze, time started changing pace, my body was acting really differently, and then like the flick of a switch, adrenaline kicked in. I felt no pain, no cold, no fear. My only thought was do whatever it takes to stay on this boat, and it wasn't even a thought, it was a knee-jerk reaction that lasted an hour. Anyways, nothing really describes the feeling of being naked against nature, it's a really unsettling perspective. And this was just a rainstorm, not even strong enough to produce any lightning. Nothing at all. I should preface this by saying that I regularly photograph roadkill, so I'm not easily shook by gory stuff, blood, etc. I've only had a car for roughly a year, and prior to that I often commuted via bike or bus to get around. One morning, early, I'm sitting in the dark waiting to catch the bus on my way to work. I notice that there is a pretty plain looking black gym bag lying in the middle of the road just near the bus stop. I was living in a less than reputable area of town at the time, so I didn't typically think much about the various trash and loose items that were blowing around the street. As I'm sitting there kind of eyeing this bag under the glow of the street light, I swear I see the bag move. I wasn't getting much sleep those days, so I chalked it up to sleep-deprived hallucinations. Not a minute later, a sedan comes barreling down the street and runs directly over the bag. That is when the strangest squealing and screeching noise starts coming from inside the bag. I run over and the bag is now definitely moving and making noise. I open it up and see the most horrifying things I have ever witnessed. The bag had 4 creatures in it that I'm sure at one point looked like kittens, but not any longer. As a cat owner / lover, I truly haven't seen anything that traumatizing / scary before or since. I'm the type of human to sleep with multiple comforters at night. Why? No damn clue. Well, during the night, one of my blankets fell onto the floor, between my bed and TV stand. I would like to clarify right now that this distance is barely 2 feet apart. Fine for walking, but you can't sit down comfortably without being squished, not mentioning getting up is sort of hard in itself. I awake one morning facing my television. In front of me I see a large lump underneath the comforter that fell onto the floor. The lump is probably 3.5 feet tall, obviously shaped as if someone is just sitting underneath of it. In my tired state I immediately think it's my boyfriend underneath, trying to play some sort of stupid prank on me. Smiling, I press my pointer and middle finger directly into the center of his forehead, pushing him back as far as my arm can possibly reach, only for him to come back up slowly. Not as if it was a punch clown toy that would come straight back up instantly. I'm talking actually stopping for a second before leaning back up to his first position. I continue this forehead pushing multiple times before my tired brain finally starts putting things together. This can't be my boyfriend. My boyfriend doesn't live with me. I know that sounds stupid, but he's always on my mind when I wake up to look for texts and such. I suddenly start realizing, while still pushing, that someone is sitting underneath my blanket in front of me. I start to scramble backwards on my bed, ripping blanket after blanket off of me, just desperately trying to get away from who the fuck ever is in front of me. As luck would have it, my sister at the same time a word, barely even flinched. I knew he saw me, saw us staring right back at him. He had been caught and he knew it. I cautiously break my stare down to see my sister next to me, standing tall in her place and needing no more explanation, scrunch her eyes into a death glare like you can't imagine any 11-year-old managing. Silently, without breaking gaze, he walked back into his room without a sound to prove he was real. That last line isn't meant to be poetic. I heard nothing from him. I remember thinking it looked as if he were gliding on thin air and not actually walking. Like a ghost. 20 years later, the heat of his invisible stare still haunts me, and on a really weak night, I unintentionally see his hovering shadow in my own home still staring me down. Whilst I still question whether this really happened to this day, I remember it vividly. I was sorting laundry for my parents and was bent over in front of some mirror they used to keep in their room. It's about as tall as me, so I could see myself fully. Due to the fact that it was evening, the sun made an orange glint on the thing, making the scene even creepier. I glanced at the mirror by chance. Let me make this clear first. I was a pretty poker-faced kid, not much emotion at all. It should also be noted that while the room and mirror before this happened had an orangish glow from the sun, it was startling clear. But I shit you not, my reflection was staring straight at me, smiling. I stumbled back, falling over. Horror trope, I know, but my reflection didn't fall either. It simply stood straight and stared at me with this cocky, almost triumphant smile on its face. I blinked and it disappeared just like that. I've never had anything quite like that happen to me again, but I don't have many mirrors in my house because of it. I am 26 years old, I live in Lower Mainland / Fraser Valley, British Columbia, Canada, and this experience still scares me to this day. Me and my friend saw a 7 to 8 feet tall pure white being with 2 arms in his backyard 5-acre forest in the rural part of my city at night. It was swaying back and forth silently and I felt like I was going to die. Entered my friend's backyard 5-acre forest at night close to 1 a.m. in the northwest rural part of my city, and both of us immediately saw something out of place down the path below, about 30 to 40 feet away from us, in between the trees, that was tall, white and 3-dimensional. It appeared to be completely white and soft like light, but it did not illuminate the trees or ground around it. There was no face or any facial features we could see, no arms, and it was shaped in an upside down V or U. It was making creepy swaying movements with its whole body, 2 legs left to right, back and forth, silently, still standing on the forest floor in the exact same spot the whole time we saw it. It was so white that you could see the shadow being cast on it while it was swaying like it was a real animal. It did not pick up its legs or walk at all. I can only explain it as looking like 7 to 8 foot really white, soft, shiny separated curtains in the shape of a upside down V or U with bulkiness / shape to the top. The 2 long legs / arms looked like the frontal view of an ape's forearms would look like when they are crawling on all fours, as if the 2 long legs were hunched in front. It was moving left to right in a specific motion, standing on the forest floor in the same area between the trees, making absolutely no sound, and there was absolutely no wind. It was beautiful to look at but terrifying at the same time. We watched it in silence as it was swaying, and I started to feel impending doom. The sinking feeling in your chest set in, and it felt like I was going to die or something bad was going to happen. I told my friend specifically, I don't like this. He agreed, and we immediately left the forest. We went back in the morning, and there was nothing out of the ordinary, spiderweb, garbage, etc., in the spot where we saw the supernatural being. These specific beings go by Sasayudal and various other names from different indigenous cultures here in the Lower Mainland / Fraser Valley, British Columbia, Canada. The same kind of creature was caught on camera and labeled the Fresno Nightcrawler. I live in Moose Country. Anyone who lives in Moose Country knows if you hit one on the highway, you're dead. Full stop. Either the neck trauma from slamming into it going 100 to 120 on the highway, or the weight of the beast from its body landing on you and crushing you. You can also die in more freak ways after hitting a moose, like if their antlers strike you or if the windshield cuts you in a bad spot, but that's way less likely. You can even die if you try to veer away and send your car into a tumble. And they love to cross the highway in wintertime at night, which is just the worst. Anyways, my dad was driving my sister and I on the highway in Alberta at about 10 p.m. during a heavy snowfall. My dad and I were talking for a while, and the conversation died down just long enough to see a gigantic animal like 30 meters ahead of us. My dad yelled moose and veered left hard. We missed its shoulder by 10 centimeters. If he had hit the moose's shoulder, I would have been the one most affected by the animal. My dad saved everyone's life, and if he had veered a half second later, he might have been down one son. The moose was right outside my window, and I'll never forget it. That must have been when I was 13 or 14. Whenever I drive on the highway, I make sure to look real hard at the sides of the road, and I straight up don't drive during nighttime snowfall. I don't feel comfortable talking about the scariest thing, but I'll talk about the second scariest thing. I was playing League or some shit during the summer around 12 to 1 p.m. My friends wanted to hang out around a certain time. Said yes, but got hit with massive heat because my room is the hottest in the damn house, and it doesn't help that I hate the heat, always like the cold. Anyways, I took a nap because it made me so tired. I had a night terror almost immediately. In the corner in my room was a bunny mask that leaked shadows from its eyes and started talking in a deep, sinister tone. My friend was in the dream telling it the bunny mask to go away. Then it opened its mouth and flooded my room with darkness. It started taunting me about how life is pointless and hell is apparent. That wasn't the scariest part, it was when it showed me its eyes. Those bright yellow eyes, they bore into my skull like lasers. It felt like I accidentally poked myself in the eye staring into those things. It looked like the devil, but even worse. Not religious, but it was terrifying. I did not want to sleep for a long time, and now I dread taking naps because of that dream. It felt so wrong being forced to look into those orbs of so-called eyes. My entire family was held at gunpoint. I was 8, we were driving home through a really shitty neighborhood. We stopped at a red light, wedged between two cars, when the guys in front of us and behind us get out of their cars. They've all got guns, they're pointing them at my parents and I, and we're frozen. They wanted our money, phones, electronics, anything they could get out of the car. My parents obliged. I remember sitting in the backseat, this tiny kid, with a man on either side of me holding up a gun. People were walking by on the streets with their heads down, they'd seen this happen before. We didn't have a lot of money, my parents handed over maybe $100 worth of things and $5 cash. I figured this was it, we were all dead. Or maybe they'd kill my parents and kidnap me. Who knows what? Luckily, they took their things and sped off when the light turned green. I'd repressed this memory for so many years, only ever remembered the story, but a decade of therapy drew it out, and I'd rather it have stayed hidden. My ex-wife's driving literally gave me nightmares for about a year. I tried to help her get a license by teaching her to drive, but it did more harm than good. She would run stop signs and red lights, drive the wrong way down one-way streets, nearly cause accidents, and road rage at people who did nothing wrong but got in her way. And I mean non-stop, while I was screaming at the top of my lungs for her to please stop the car. Her reaction to that was to tell me to shut up because I was distracting her. I'm typically not scared of death, but I was visibly shaking and jumpy for about a day afterwards. I've never been so scared in my life, and I swear I have flashbacks sometimes. Last night, saw my wife of 7 months pass out face first on the tile floor of our bathroom and start having a seizure. It was right after we made love. We were both naked. It's never happened before. It's just me and her, our closest friends are at least 20 minutes away. I pride myself in being the one with a level head in an emergency, but this time I completely lost it. I started screaming for help. There was blood everywhere. I have never been more terrified in my entire life than I was in that 30 seconds. She finally came to. I got her dressed and took her to the ER. She is fine now, but I can't sleep. I just keep hearing sound of her face hitting the floor, and it makes me fucking sick. I thought she was hemorrhaging because of all the blood. The doctor said she may have been pregnant. I thought I was going to lose the person I want to spend my life with. I wouldn't wish that shit on anyone. The scariest thing I have ever seen was the tornado I survived. Was out and about with my mom when a weather alert came on about a possible tornado, but it was supposed to just be rain and maybe some cylindrical wind patterns, so everybody was like, hey, since tornadoes weren't a big thing in our area. Literally 30 minutes later, the sky turns black and we're like, let's get home. Within about 5 minutes, we decide to look for shelter and come across this auto shop that's holding their door closed. We swerve up, jump out and yell if we can come in, and they let us in. We were relieved, but couldn't help but think, what if the tornado comes this way now and tears up the place we're in? Soon we see emergency vehicles headed to where we came from, and another lady comes in saying, holy shit, that refrigerator thing is insane, where'd it come from? It calmed down and we decided to head to a local hospital like 2 minutes away because it's a designated storm/tornado shelter. We get there, and the sky is green, light poles are down, and people are coming in bloodied and a bit of a scaredy cat. One late spring afternoon we decide to go under the tracks in this low, about 4 foot tall, rectangular tunnel that lets the creek flow through during rain. It was about 10 feet wide and about 40 to 50 feet long. No lights, and once you get about halfway down there's a small stretch where you can't see much. The sun is starting to set and we are using our lighters to watch our step. At the time there was quite a large homeless population in the area, most of whom were not very friendly, so we didn't mess up someone's sleep spot. It should really only take us 5 minutes to walk through. We were stupid and thought it would be cool. I'm in the back, since I was the chicken shit who didn't really want to go. And I hear them whispering for me to move to one side right now and don't look down and don't touch the walls or ground. Red flags like a... My heart immediately starts racing and I can feel what I now know was an anxiety attack forming. The way they said it, I knew they weren't joking, they knew how I was and didn't usually fuck with me unless it was a harmless situation that I would laugh off. So I'm freaking out trying to walk hunched over. I was already 6 feet tall as a teen, and not scrape my head or shoulders on the ceiling with my Bic lighter held out in front of me when I see bloody chunks of meat. Small chunks. With fur attached. Curiosity and confusion start to take over and I move my arm to the side. There was an adult cat ripped apart at the abdomen and splayed out like it was operated on. The other furry chunks was the remains of its litter. Chopped, chewed, up and smeared across the ceiling and floor and wall. There was writing but I didn't want to look long enough. The 30 or so seconds I saw was more than enough. I almost threw up right there but felt one of my friends pull on my arm to hurry up because, of course, there were 3 sets of legs walking at the end of the tunnel where we entered. If they wanted to they could go up and over the tunnel in seconds and be on both sides. There's only 3 of us stupid and high 16 to 17-year-old kids with no weapons of any sort except our lighters. So we cut the lights and haul ass before they looked down and see us. They spotted us as we ran from the opposite end and gave a short chase but they didn't want to catch us, they stopped before they hit the end of the tunnel. I had forgotten about this event but all the animal stories being told in the thread brought it right back. I remember how fucking scared and creeped out I was. My friends wouldn't tell me what the writing was, maybe they didn't really make out what it was and assumed it was some weird wannabe satanic sacrifice. Or maybe they did read it and it was truly up. This is not something I saw, really, but experienced. Around 2 years ago my best friend, her mom, and her sister took a road trip to Idaho to go camping and reconnect with each other and ourselves. My friend's family were super into road trips and frequently went camping. We are originally from Oklahoma so none of us really had any experience camping in mountainous regions but we were pretty confident that we would be okay. We stopped at a Koa place because we heard those were pretty safe places to camp, but it was still in the city and it was more like glamping, where people brought their RVs and stuff and watched TV instead of traditional camping. We wanted a real, deep in the woods type of camping so we drove through the camp just kind of looking around and then this guy waves us over. He was pretty forceful when he asks my friend's mom what we're doing. He leans on the car window and looks in at each of us. He says that people live there and we better be careful driving around and looking at people's houses. She tells him we're looking for a place to camp. He leans back off the car and says, well, you can't stay here, we're full up. But if you're looking for somewhere more remote, you can go up the road, around 40 miles from town, up into the mountains. There's camping grounds there. And you won't have to pay like you would here. We say okay thank you and head up. When we leave he tells us to be careful, so we drive up into the mountain and find a nice little camping area next to a stream. You can see our campsite from the road, but can't really see the road from the campsite unless you're looking through the trees. We haven't seen anyone or any other cars since we left the Koa site. We drove all the way up to the top of the mountain and then back down to our area. Usually, there would be people all over but it's not skiing season yet so it seems we're all alone on the mountain. Perfect. Exactly the sort of atmosphere we wanted. We set up camp and my friend and I go survey the area. We find some horse tracks / droppings in the woods close to the camp even though the only house we saw coming in was at the base of the mountain, and there were no horses there. I'm a criminal psychology major so I jokingly comment on how easy it would be to kidnap all of us here. 4 women, no weapons, in the middle of nowhere, from a different state, there was no cell phone reception. The stream would cover any sounds of people outside our tent and if they're on horses well, no tracks. This unsettles my friend so I shut up. As the sun began to set I started to get the weirdest feeling. I don't believe in intuition or anything like that, so I just tell myself that the feeling I'm having is from my anxiety. But it's different. It's like a gut-wrenching feeling that I've never had before or since. We lay down to go to sleep. After about an hour of trying to sleep, I turn over because I cannot shake this feeling. I see my friend, who is also wide awake. I say, "Are you okay?" And she says, "Yeah, I just feel weird." At this point this feeling is so intense that I have to sit up. Everything in my body is saying if you don't get out of this tent you are going to die. I tell my friend and her family that I'm going to go sit in the car because I'm cold. My friend says she'll come with me. So we both go sit in the car. It's about 2 a.m. at this point. We're talking about random stuff and finally she says she thinks she'll be able to go to sleep. So I let her sleep in the passenger seat, while I just look around and try to place this feeling I'm having. The moon was unbelievably bright that night and I'm just looking up through the sunroof and looking at the stars. The feeling is starting to slowly subside and I start to unwind a bit. I'm literally just falling asleep when I'm jolted awake. It felt like I had been electrocuted. I sit straight up and look around, certain that someone will be standing outside the car, ready to kill me. Nothing. No one. I cannot shake this feeling, though. I tell myself I just freaked myself out and force myself to lay back down. As soon as my head hits the headrest I see a pair of headlights driving up the mountain. Okay. Weird. We haven't seen anyone else in probably 14 hours since we've been there. And this person is driving around at 3 o'clock in the morning. I watch them pass the entrance to our campsite and am just about to get out of the car to go pee when I see reverse lights, and then headlights coming down the entrance to our camp. I shake my friend awake and say someone is here. We need to leave. Now. She wakes up and notices I'm talking very fast with tears streaming down my face. I don't even remember beginning to cry. I have never been that afraid in my life. I didn't know who/what was in that truck, but I was convinced that if we stayed to find out we would never be heard from again. We both watched the truck come down our path, pass our car, and pull into the vacant campsite next to ours. It's hard to see through the trees, but we see several people get out of the truck. At this point we realize we have nothing to defend ourselves with. We don't even have the car keys. The only option is to get out of the car, go wake up her mom and sister, and leave. I open my door as silently as possible, but the interior light comes on and we both say fuck it. We run to the tent and wake them up saying, someone is here in that truck over there. We have a really bad feeling. We need to go. Her sister gets out of the tent, upset that we woke her up. She takes one look at my face and starts packing. The site took around an hour and a half to set up and about 15 minutes to be packed with us in the car. We leave and as soon as we turn down the main road towards town the feeling I've been having all night goes away all at once. We slept in a hotel that night and found a campsite with more people and cell phone reception to finish our week of camping. I've never felt that feeling since and I still don't know what caused me to jolt awake before I saw the headlights. My father chasing my older sister in a car. This might need a little bit of backstory. I don't comment on things often and it's pretty late right now, so please forgive me if this is messy. My father was verbally and emotionally abusive. When I was 14 years old he told my mom to leave and to take us, my big sister and I, with her. We stayed with my grandma for a few months after moving to my mom's hometown, eventually moving into my great-grandmother's old house. My father knew we were there because we didn't have anywhere else to go. A lot of stuff happened in the first year, but it's not that important to the story. He was very possessive man. He couldn't stand us being out of his sight, so he would constantly drive by our house to make sure we were home and there were no visitors. But no, he wasn't stalking us. Absolutely not. He was only delivering child support. It would be so much quicker for him to put it in our mailbox instead of sending in the mail. Yeah, it was a really stupid excuse. Nobody bought it. Anyways, a year passed by. It was summertime and my big sister had just gotten back from a beach trip with her best friend. My sister, Mom, Grandma and I were all sitting on the front porch of our house. We hadn't been there very long when Mom got a text message from my father. He let Mom know that he was going to do one of his oh-so-convenient drive-bys to drop off CS. My sister had taken my mom's car and he saw it was missing, so really he just wanted to see if Mom was home yet. My sister was like hell no and decided that she was going to leave the house for a bit to avoid him, so she started walking to her car. I was afraid of him, so I ran to the front door to go inside and hide. Do you ever get that terrible feeling that something bad is going to happen? That's the feeling I had as I saw my father's truck driving down our street right as my sister was backing her car out of the driveway. I started calling for her but it was too late, she couldn't hear me anyway. My father slammed on the brakes a few feet away from my sister. His truck blocked the road. He then stepped on the gas and sped towards my sister's car, only to slam on the brakes again just before hitting her car. My mom and grandma started yelling, but he didn't pay any attention to them. Our street leads to a dead end, so my sister had nowhere to go aside from further into the neighborhood. So she drove away as fast as she could, and my father chased her. At one point he had chased my sister into the ditch and tried backing into her car. The gate on the truck, I honestly don't know if that's what it's called, was down. If he had managed to back into her car it would have seriously injured if not killed her with the way things were angled. My mom had ran after them on foot, screaming. I have never seen her move too fast in my life. She basically jumped on the hood of the truck and yelled at him. That bought my sister some time and she managed to get out of the ditch. But my father got around mom and cornered my sister in a neighbor's yard a few seconds later. I don't remember much of what happened after that because I was in the middle of a panic attack. Details are fuzzy. All I remember is that he wouldn't leave her alone. He tried hitting her so many times. Thankfully my sister is a pretty good driver and managed to move in time. She eventually got away and drove off to go hide somewhere. The neighbors were calling the cops as my father pulled up to our house once more, this time stopping at the mailbox to put the CS in. He glared up at me as he did so. Never in my life have I seen so much hatred in someone's eyes. He looked like the devil. Then he left, presumably to go find my sister. Me, my grandma and mom got in the car to go find her before my father did. We never found her, but once we got a hold of her on the phone she told us where she went and we told her it was safe to come home. Eventually everyone was safe in our house and the police were on their way. He sent a few threatening texts after the whole thing. But any time it was brought up after that, he swears I was just trying to talk to her. To this date he still tries to contact me. He gave up on my sister since she blocked his number. All I can do is send his texts straight to spam and his calls are automatically rejected. I don't know how to block him. But every time he texts or calls me he goes on about how he's changed and he doesn't under why I won't talk to him. You tried killing my sister in front of me, or at the very least you tried harming her. I could forgive him for screwing me up emotionally but I will never forgive him for trying to hurt my sister. It was the scariest thing I ever witnessed. It made me afraid to drive. I'm 19 now and I still don't have my license because of it. Other than that, we're all doing much better. About 20 years ago, aged 13 or 14, I was standing in line at the movie theater with a friend. The line was long enough that it was out the front door of the theater onto the sidewalk. People had packed themselves in tightly enough that it was very crowded. So crowded that at one point a guy lost his balance and stepped back off the curb onto the fairly major street in front of the theater. With perfectly poor timing, someone was driving by, going I'm assuming 50 to 60 kilometers per hour. The limit on that road was 50, at the exact same moment, and apparently too close to the curb. I just happened to be looking in that direction at that moment. I'll never forget the sound. The combination of breaking plastic, glass, and I'm assuming bones, made the loudest crack, followed by the man flying through the air, launched into the crowd, taking out multiple other people. The car didn't even touch their brakes, just sped off. I only caught a brief glimpse of him laying on the sidewalk while people helped him, waiting for the ambulance to arrive. It looked like his shoulder or collarbone had been messed up pretty bad, as his arm wasn't where it should have been. He had a pretty bad gash on his head, hopefully from landing, and not from the car. He was awake, and moaning so loudly, I'm not sure what was more disturbing, seeing him hit, or hearing the moans of pain. About 2 months ago I was bored at home and went to walk my dog. I also had a few things I wanted to clear out of my mind and it was a nice day. I asked my mom and she said yes. I decided to wear shorts that went to my mid-thigh, a band t-shirt, my Vans, and my glasses. This is important to the story. I usually only wore my glasses at home and at school because my vision is 520 and no matter how close I was to the board, it was usually bored. I live in a neighborhood that looks nice and like the perfect place to raise children. However, once you move in, you find out there's 2 abandoned houses, 7 pedophiles, and an abandoned church known as a spot where people do meth and coke. So as I go back into my neighborhood, there's about 4 or 5 cars that pass me. I noticed one the moment it passed and I didn't know why. I was standing at the corner about to turn into my neighbor when my dog has to pee and I need to tie my shoe. A few steps later, the car I noticed is stopped. I see this man get out of his car after popping his trunk, and grab out some shit that looked like a rope and duct tape. All of a sudden I realized I had some deja vu shit or whatever and was thankful I brought my glasses. This guy wasn't ripped, had black hair, a green and black flannel, stubble, and a shitty looking white car. Sure enough, this guy stops me from across the street. Creepy guy, what's your name? Me, Daniela. Him, nice to meet you Daniela, I'm Jared. Comment if you think you get the reference. Me, fool? Is trying not to show fear Jared, how old are you Daniela? Me, 15. Jared, really, you don't look 15. Me, smiles to assure him of my lie I promise you I am. I turned 15 in September, I'm a freshman at, insert random high school cause I'm not saying the one I used. Jared, can I get your number? Me, I don't have a phone number. Which was, and still is, true, Jared, do you have Instagram? Me, no. Lying this time, Hoping he doesn't recognize me or realize I'm lying. Jared, do you have Facebook? Me, yeah, but it's only for family and friends my mother has met. Jared, oh, well, do you want to ride home? Me, no, I took a walk with my dog to get exercise and think. Yeah, I'm far from home, but that's the point. I should probably start heading back to my apartment before it's too late. But I still have a lot of thinking to do, and the natural environment helps me think. But thank you for the offer, you're too kind. Jared's visually disappointed. Have a nice day, Daniela. Me, smiles wide, you too. He drives off and I continue walking like everything is fine. Then as soon as he is out of sight, I run home. I find the ice cream man, who is kind of my and for if my other friend's friend. Explain what happened, and that was the end of it. I haven't walked the dog in 2 months without arguing with my mom about it first.